Hey, Bianca here, and welcome to Teach Like Bianca. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my classroom procedures and routines. Now, this video is going to be part of a three-part series, which will also talk about classroom organization, which will be next week's video, and a video that I already have out now, which is managing classroom behaviors. These three videos are connected together to help you set up your classroom for success. So you might be struggling this year, which we all are, and you want to maybe scale back a little bit and reteach some of these procedures and expectations to make things go a little bit smoother in your classroom. I'm going to give you some questions to ask yourself to prepare, as well as I'm going to show you what I do in my own classroom. If this is something that is interesting to you, keep watching because I'm going to be sharing with you my overall classroom procedures and routines and give you a list that will help you kind of define what your own procedures and routines should look like in your classroom. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.
Let's go ahead and begin. Regardless of where you are in your school year at the beginning, even before the school year, or maybe or have already started the school year and you're somewhere in the middle of the school year and you're reevaluating your systems, these are some questions that you should think about so that you can prepare your expectations for your classroom. So the first one is, how will you gain student attention? Is there a bell? Is there a hand clap? Uh, is there a place in the classroom where you always stand? And for me, if you watch my managing behaviors video, I just will stand and be silent, and I'll wait for my class to get their attention, which for me works well. So depending on what system you want to use, it's going to be something that you're going to practice repeatedly with your students so that they know what that expectation is when you practice it with them. The next question you want to think about is, how should students signal that they want help or need attention? So commonly raising their hand. There could be another signal for uh, going to the bathroom or getting water, throwing something away, maybe washing their hands, whatever, getting supplies. There could be different signals for each. So you want to make sure that you have those in place. Another one is, how will students obtain needed work or materials for the classroom? I know when my students come into my classroom, I have something on the board that's an expectation for them to do to prepare while I'm taking attendance and just getting some small things out of the way before I actually start class. So, and during that time, that's when they need to gather their materials. The next question to think about is, how will students transition to cooperative group work? So if you are putting students into groups, that should already be laid out ahead of time. So sometimes I have little color-coded dots and I place those on the desk so I could say everybody that has a yellow dot on their table, go get together. Everybody that has a green dot, get together, or you can mix them up. You can also use numbers. You can also use rows. Depending on how you want students to get together, you want to already have a system that's easily already in place and that's easy to follow. And then another question is, what are the procedures for getting students to use the restroom or getting a drink of water? So that could be another with the hand signals. I also use uh, paper checkout for going to the bathroom. So some students have bathroom passes that they can use, and then they sign off on it every quarter. And if they do not use their bathroom passes, and they get extra credit. And some students, uh, you could be lenient on it, but it's just a way for them to manage and track their bathroom needs. And if they do need a break, if they can use like a break card, like I have a refocus table in my classroom that I'll be talking about in my next video for classroom organization. But if they need a break, use that break table instead of maybe going out of the classroom and using their bathroom pass. And then what will students be expected to do when they finish assignments early? So a lot of behaviors that can come up in the classroom is because students are finished early with their work and they don't know what to do. And they could be distracting other students that are trying to get done with their work. So having an enrichment folder works very well for this. And in an enrichment folder, you can have coloring sheets, dot to dot sheets. You can have brain teasers, word searches, crosswords, just a variety of things that might work for your age level of student. And then I find even the highest grade that I taught regularly was 8th grade, and they love all those things, even coloring sheets, word searches, things like that. So having a folder where you can give students an expectation or having the exit directions also works well, that I'm going to be talking about in another video. But exit directions works well because students will know what to do when they do get done with their work. And then what are your procedures for tardies or early dismissals? Do you want students to stay in their seats? Do you want them just to stand by their seat? Do you want them to line up at the door? And if for leaving, and then if they are coming in tardy, I used to have a teacher actually in high school that used to make us wait by the door if we're coming into class late. And if a student's leaving early, it sometimes causes a lot of disruption. So overall, you want to think about those procedures. And then what are your procedures for turning in homework or passing assignments back to students? So uh, I don't assign homework in my classroom, but if students don't finish in class, then it does become homework. So I do have students, there's a turn-in tray to turn in their assignments, and there's even a pass back folder. And students, and I usually pass back papers on Fridays when students are doing independent reading. So you want to have an assign or a system for that as well. So students will ask when, they might always ask when are they going to get something back, and you'll say, you know, I pass my papers on Fridays, or things will be passed back to you on whatever day that you choose. And then I also have a procedure for turning in late work, so you might want to think about that. And I do that so I know that if it's in a, I have a tray for late work where students, if they put it in the late tray folder, that it will be graded before other work. So then I know that it's late and they want it graded and turned in instead of being shuffled in with the regular assignments of the week. And then how will you make sure your students understand the expected behavior? So how are you going to practice the routines with them? Will, uh, for example, I have my students play a Kahoot, which they all love at any age. They'll play a Kahoot and then they take a quiz that isn't a graded quiz that's going to go in the grade book, but they can win prizes and things like that, little pieces of candy for getting things right on the quiz that is all about our expectations and classroom routines and procedures. And then what will the consequences be if your students don't follow the expectation? And when I say consequences, it's not, oh, they're going to get in trouble for doing something that they can't remember, especially, you know, at my current school that I work at, students have 7 class periods. So they have 7 teachers that they have to follow and remember expectations for every teacher. But just reteaching, trying to figure out what that's going to look like within your classroom. So I go through reteaching and modeling and a lot of practicing and reminders that goes on all the way until the end of October. And then here are some examples of procedures and routines. Entering and exit the classroom is an example of a procedure and routine. Like I was saying previously, how do you want them to line up or stand by their desk before dismissal? Do you want them to line up outside the door? Do you want them just to come inside the classroom when it's time? It just kind of depends on also your building. So if you're at elementary school, you might need to line up in your grade level area. It might be outside on the playground at recess. Sometimes it might be down in the cafeteria or the gym. It kind of just depends on what that looks like for your building. And then another example of procedures and routines, turning in assignments and late work, like I talked about previously. Students need to know where they're turning in things instead of, I used to have students that would just lay things on my desk or lay things at the front of the room, and you want them to know where they're turning in assignments and late work and have that labeled, clearly labeled. Attendance, absent, and tardy procedures. I do have absent folders, so if students are absent, they can come and in and check the absent tray. So if they're absent on Tuesday, they will look in the absent tray for Tuesday and find the worksheet or find whatever materials that is left with their name on it, and then they'll have the worksheet without having to wait for me to get the worksheet for them. Lunch and recess, what does that look like? And remember, that might follow your building. I used to have lunch in my classroom, which was volunteer. So I would have to create passes for students and just having students know what days you're having lunch. So my lunch days were Wednesdays and Fridays. And I would create passes for students to come on those days and they can come and eat lunch with me in my classroom. Bell work, do now, entry tasks. You always want to have something where students can come in and get started and get to work without waiting for you. That expectation is probably the biggest expectation you should have there, in a routine that is just procedural throughout the school year. Because you need that time to reset, you need that time to prepare at the beginning of the day, take attendance, those types of things. Finishing work early, remember the enrichment folder is key. Always having a list of things that students know how to do on their own. That could also be maybe some tech things as well. They can go on their Chromebook and do, for example, typing.com for 10 minutes or whatever the case might be, until you're ready to move on to the next transition or until the end of class. But these are also things that you have to practice with them and make sure that you already have established accounts for them so that it's easier for them to log in and do those things on their own. And then use of the classroom library. My classroom library, if students wanted to check out a book, or even if they wanted to take one home, they would have to write their name down, put the checkout date, and so forth. So I can check to make sure that they're returning the book, because it was kind of loosely managed on my end. Sometimes I would give books away a lot, so it kind of just depends on what your procedures are for your classroom library, if you have one. Independent work time and asking for help. Uh, when I mean asking for help, if they're like at our school, we don't have groups. Kids are in rows or in twos at the most. But if you want your students asking their elbow partner for help, or talking to their elbow partner during their independent work time, what does that look like? And what is that voice level? And that's kind of like, I don't know if champs is kind of maybe what that might look like, the champs level of the voice control of the classroom. And then use of technology, laptop, the tablet, or cell phone in the classroom is big. I was the type of person, I do not want to see your cell phone at all. I put it in your backpack, put it in your pocket. I don't want to see it. And laptop is only taken out at the time that I request it. Um, and that's, I'm coming from middle school level, and all students have, their laptops or their Chromebooks with them at all times. And a lot of students do have cell phones. So just having a parking lot for your cell phone is also great. Students can see it. It's not being touched or messed with or looked at, but they could see it and just know that it's somewhere in the classroom where they can get it at the end of the classroom. Nobody's using it. Transitions and moving in the classroom, those are some big procedures and routines, because in my early days of teaching, like my first and second year, I always felt like I had trouble with transitions. So we would get started on something early on, and then when we would transition to the next part of the lesson, I felt like sometimes my classroom would be out of control. So you want to make transitions quick and swift, but you also want to be able to have your students get up out of their seat at least once a class hour or a class period. So you just want to make sure you practice those things and what those look like with voice levels off, and get those procedures down. Pencil sharpening. One big thing about pencil sharpening is I don't like to hear the pencil sharpener go off if I'm talking in front of the classroom and teaching, or if a student is talking and sharing through discussion as well. So if a student does get up and try to sharpen the pencil, I'll stop that. Organization, what does that look like for your classroom? Being prepared, having their materials ready to go, having their Chromebook charged, having just their assignment that they may have the previous day back in the classroom. And I do use folders for that I'll talk about in just a second. Group project work, you must have norms at all times for group project work, so everybody has a role. And you want to establish these procedures early on. Getting supplies. Do you have students get supplies for their row, for their group, or just for themselves? What does that look like? Handing out papers. I hand out papers. Since my students are in rows, I hand out papers to the side of the rows. So I hand them out horizontally and not vertically where it goes back. School-wide expectations and rules, you always want to follow those. And I don't like to call them rules, even though that's the norm, but more like agreements, because if this happened, then it just, you want to think about the cause and the effect more of an agreement, and instead of using the term rules. And then eating, drinking, and chewing gum are some other examples of procedures and routines. You want to make sure that uh, what you follow for the school-wide rules kind of flows into your classroom, because uh, the janitor, people know right away if there's eating or drinking and chewing gum going on just in your classroom and no other classroom. So it kind of depends on you. I mean, it's fine when you have, your parties and things like that in your class, but remember, follow the school-wide expectations first, and then trickle down into what is into your classroom. Emergency drills. Um, I taught special education from a resource standpoint, so I wanted to practice these before we actually had the emergency drills, and that may be something you want to do as well that's going to be helpful for you. Heading papers and assignments, you want to practice this pretty regularly. I really always just want the, name and date at least, because I know other teachers actually have other procedures for heading their papers. So if I could just get the name and date, and I have a no name area in my classroom for my students, a no name tray, and I actually throw those papers away at the end of the semester because I can't go back and grade those papers anyways. And there'll be a lot of times where students won't claim their papers, which is crazy, but they won't claim their papers even if they might see it marked as missing in Skyward. But having that procedure down is very helpful because you want to get them in a routine of being responsible for claiming their work. Dismissal is just like exiting the classroom. What does that look like? Bathroom policy. I talked about having the bathroom passes previously, where students have 3 bathroom passes. Homework. I don't give homework, but you want to have a place um, in line for homework. Maybe you have a missing work contract where they are able to turn it in late. But, homework is kind of, I feel like it's a little bit dying out. It's more of the work that you don't finish in class. That's what you want to use. Assigning classroom jobs is probably the biggest part that will help you with the examples of these procedures and routines, because if you assign a classroom job, that helps out with passing out papers, even putting names on papers for students that were absent to put into the absent tray, for line leaders, making sure the classroom is clean and tidy if you are eating in the classroom, and just a variety of things, getting supplies. So assigning classroom jobs is probably a really big example into getting all these things to work. And I haven't had assigned classroom jobs in my classroom in probably about 6 years. It's been quite some time because it's sometimes, yeah, it's hard to manage. And when I did have classroom jobs, I had students fill out an application like they're applying for a job, and we would rotate the classroom jobs every couple weeks, and they would get paid with some sort of uh, candy or something, some sort of prize. So it's very helpful if you do have classroom jobs to help you. And then just overall having a behavior management system where you at least give a warning, you have an action, where, if, for example, if you have a student that's disrupting in the classroom and they're just talking to their neighbor, you give them a warning, then you give them their action warning where you move them to somewhere else in the classroom. And then the contacting parents is the next step. And then depending on what your school, your building has, a referral or an infraction type of behavior management system goes next, because you don't want to just jump from you gave them a warning to referral infraction. So you want to have some steps placed in the classroom. So if they aren't following classroom procedures and routines, and they're more being a distraction and interfering with others' learning, that's when you want to make sure you have a behavior management place that they know and that their parents know. So I do want to show you what my procedures and routines actually look like. So, my very first thing what students always do when they come in from the very first day of school, before they even learn about the procedures and routines of the classroom, is they'll come in and they'll see something on the board, and that's our silent start. And usually it could be something just as simple as writing in your agenda, taking out your notebook, getting started on like some fluency practice or grammar, reading, journaling, like a writing prompt, or maybe just a puzzle, a crossword, or something they have on their desk. So I always start out the classroom with something like that, so that you need that time, that first like 2, 3 minutes at the start of the day or the start of the period, just to get everything in order. Then um, I do have my students have a portfolio that they keep in class, that they keep all their work in, and that works very well for me because then they have the opportunity to never take things home or put things in their backpack to lose things. Everything stays in a folder, stays in the classroom. I do also give them a spiral composition notebook, um, or for writing prompts, just to keep track of everything, and they keep that in the classroom as well. Um, I do give out those bathroom passes, and then they have a sign out so we can keep track as a building who leaves and at what time. I also have pencil checkout. If students don't have a pencil, they can check out a pencil for me, and they just give me their backpack. I give them a pencil, and then we exchange back at the end of class. Pencil sharpening. I talked about this before. I don't like pencil sharpening while I'm talking, and it's just very distracting. Students can lose information. And then I also do book checkout library, where students will check out a book if they want to take it home, and it's very loosely taken care of. If students want the book, I just give it to them. Cell phones, backpacks. I used to have a place where I keep backpacks in the under a table at the front of the door, but that was usually because students were always digging in their backpacks or looking for things, and it was just very distracting, or opening and putting their stuff away before it was time to go. But now it's a little bit different. Students are not doing that as much. And then name and date. There's only two things I like on the paper. And then the enrichment folder, I have that up in the classroom where students can see it and know where to go to get any assignments out of the enrichment folder that they want to do. Sometimes I do give extra credit for it. I also have an enrichment folder in Google Classroom where students can go to the links and find uh, something that they want to work on. Typing.com, no red ink. We have a MobiMax account in our building that students use as well. And there's a couple other things. And then I'm going to be doing a Google Classroom tutorial of how I set things up, and a couple of videos away, but that's coming up soon. Also, I do have an absent tray. I label it absent tray so that they know where to go, where to come in and check it if they're absent. And then we practice our turn-in process so students know how to turn things in, know how to go to the absent tray, know what to do if they're turning in something late. And then our syllabus, it says syllabus on Tuesday because when we start the first day of school, we only do, I believe, Thursday, Friday of the week, and then we have Labor Day weekend, and then we come back, and then it's Tuesday. So I give the syllabus on Tuesday, but I start going over these procedures on the first day of school, and then go over those procedures again on the second day of school. And then I just keep reminding them, you're going to get a syllabus that has some more expectations in the syllabus, and that it's meant for you and your parents to know. So they will sign the syllabus, their parents will sign a syllabus, and then I also have a movie permission signing area where parents sign if they want their students watching PG-13 movies, like The Outsiders is one that we watch. And I get that out at the beginning of the week because I don't want students to forget about it over the weekend. So that's what my procedures look like. Another way that I show or in how to teach my procedures is I use memes. So these are some like older memes from like 6, 7 years ago or so, maybe even more. But I used memes to get my point across, and these are just some of the ones I use, and I put my slides and that I go over. And it's kind of a lighthearted way where students can relate to the memes, um, and also just hopefully remember the meme instead of just me just reteaching them all the time. So we do the modeling expectations, and we go over them together as a class. We also do a Kahoot game, a quiz, and then we use the memes. And then, of course, we come back to them after breaks, like winter break or midwinter break, spring break. We come back to these expectations again if things are getting lost or if we need to reevaluate. So these are my overall expectations, classroom expectations, procedures, and routines that I do in the classroom and how I teach them and how I put them all together. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'm also going to put down in the comments any links that I talked about. I do have some blog posts that you can go to and read everything, and just let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Stay tuned for the next video, which is about classroom organization.